What to expect when going to a UK prison for the first time, part 2. If you're thinking of taking an all expenses paid holiday at Her Majesty's pleasure, then I hope these two topics I have today help. Number 1, my story. Now, after reading many of the previous videos comments, I've been asked why I went to prison, where I went to prison, and how long did I serve. Now, I've been to prison on 2 occasions and I've served a little over 2 years in total. I've served time in Birmingham, Leicester, Onley Prison, which is in Rugby, and Sudbury Prison, which is in Derbyshire. Both times I went down for fighting. Now, back when I was a teen, for me anyway, it was standard procedure that on a weekend you have a night out on the town, a kebab, and then a fight. It wasn't considered a huge deal at the time, and the fight will be discussed throughout the community of like-minded people for a week or so until the next fight. It was a stupid way of living life, but at the time, my existence evolved around the opinion I thought others had of me, and backing out of a fight was a no-go, and believing that I had a reputation of being a hard man was everything to me. It wasn't until I was locked up in prison for the second time that I realised how stupid my mindset was back then. I guess the majority of teens and young adults act out in different ways. Unfortunately for me, my actions landed me in prison and took away 2 years of my life, which I will never get back and never forget. As well as me growing up a lot and having a totally different outlook on life, one of the main reasons I would deter any young adult from making the same mistakes and living a similar lifestyle as I did back then is because of the rapid increase in knife crime in the UK, which is sickening. For the majority of people who also acted as I did back then, it was an unspoken rule that no weapons were to be used, and 2 men just fought out their problems before going home and sleeping it off. However, on one occasion, I myself was a victim of knife crime. It's left me scarred for life and could have ended a lot worse. The even scarier thing is that the fight was over nothing. It was about something stupid which was of no relevance at all. Halfway through this particular argument, I saw the guy in question lunge at my face. I tried to dodge it, but felt just a flick and sharp sting to my face and nothing else. As I moved forward towards him to retaliate, I see him just stare at my face and then start backing off. Next thing I know, I feel liquid running down my face, and as I look down, I see blood start to splatter all over the floor. I didn't know what had happened, it was so fast. It wasn't until I looked back up at the guy and saw him and his friend run off with a knife in the hand of the main guy. An hour later, I found myself in Nottingham Hospital receiving 14 stitches. The days of a good old punch-up between consenting adults are long gone, and to presume that another person has the same mindset and mentality as you can be a very costly and life-changing mistake to make. Number 2. Getting my own cell. So the very first time I was ever locked up, I was put into a cell for 2 days on an induction wing with another inmate who had arrived in the prison in the same sweatbox as me. After this first experience, I was sure that I wanted my own cell for the entirety of my sentence. Imagine being locked up with your best friend or someone you get on with really well for 23 hours a day. Imagine that you both have to go to the toilet in the same tiny cell as each other. Imagine to constantly listen to the sound of them snoring, breathing, farting. How long would it take before you couldn't stand them anymore? Now replace that best friend element of that scenario with a fucking idiot you've got nothing in common with nor like in any way at all, and turn that one day into over 2 years. This guy I shared that first cell with for 2 days had been in the system for a long time. On the first day, I remember lying on the bunk bed talking to him as he was standing up in the cell. We had eye contact, and mid-conversation he backs up towards the toilet and in a quick motion pulls down his bottoms and sits on the toilet to take his shit. I jumped up and said, "Yo, what the fuck? Tell me if you're going to do something like that," as I walked to the other end of the cell and just looked out the window while he finished. It was at this point I knew I did not want to share a cell with anyone ever again. After those first 2 days of being locked up with that inmate, the officers had all prisoners in the induction wing move into a large holding cell to be housed in the main population. I was put into a waiting room with about 12 other people, each on the way to the same fate. The majority of them were rowdy and loud, boisterous, and getting very impatient with having to wait so long. I myself was quietly shitting it. I didn't know what to expect. We then got moved out the cell and formed a queue before each inmate took it in turns to be strip searched and given prison clothes to wear before being told what wing and what cell number they'll be staying in. I watched the people before me go ahead and talk to the officers like absolute shit, with no manners or respect shown whatsoever. Now, I myself have always been brought up to show manners and respect to everyone I meet, and I thought to myself, you know what, if I showed that respect to the officers, which they're obviously not used to, I may get my own cell when I ask for it. When it was my turn to check in, I followed all instructions without hesitation, and I spoke respectfully to the officers. When they were about to provide me with a prison cell number, I asked if I could have my own cell. The officer I asked laughed in my face. He let me know that I had taken off my neck chain too easily when I was stripped, that I complied too politely throughout the whole ordeal, and that I was obviously not going to be a threat or a problem to them, and that there was no chance of me having my own cell. I was gutted and had to spend the next 4 or 5 months sharing a cell for 23 hours a day with an array of different characters. After my first sentence, I'd already learnt my lesson, and I got out after serving around 5 months. However, I still had another court case going on from before that sentence even started, and I found myself free for only a month or so before having to return to prison and serve time for a fight which happened over a year earlier. Now, I mentioned in the first video that an officer is sent to your cell to ask questions about your safety and the safety of others. Well, the first time I went to prison, I'd answered each and every question honestly, letting the officer know that I was not a racist, that I wasn't against any religion, and that I wouldn't have a problem of being locked up with a person of a different race or religion. Well, by the time I began my second sentence, I had 5 months of prison life under my belt, and I was a changed person. I was transferred to the new prison, and I was put into a single cell on this particular induction wing where I'd be staying for 2 or 3 days. This time, when the officer came to my cell, I put on an act. I still hate myself for doing this, but I acted like a completely different person. I told this certain officer that I was a racist, which must have been fucking weird to hear, as I'm a mixed race guy myself. He asked me who I was racist towards, and I went on to explain that I hated all black people and I hated all white people. I told him that I hated all white people because of the way the white side of my family treated me because of the black in me. Then I told him I hate all black people because of the way the black side of my family treated me for having white in me. I also told him that I hated Asians and anyone else of a different race, and that I hated anyone who followed a religion of any kind. I spoke aggressively and I was extremely rude, and I spat my words out in anger. When he asked me what I would do if I was to be put into a cell of someone of a different race or religion, to my shame, I said that I would kill them. Like I previously said, I was extremely embarrassed to speak to a complete stranger in this way, but after serving 5 months locked up with fucking idiots, I wanted to do all I can in order to obtain my own cell. I thought I'd put on an excellent act, but even if this officer did see through what I was trying to do, he couldn't then exactly make me share a cell with someone who was black, white, Asian, or followed a religion, having it on paper that I'd said I'm gonna kill them. So it kind of worked. The good news was that a few hours later I found out that I was going to be having my own single cell. Every other wing had bunk beds in each cell, but this particular wing that was put me on was the only wing which was single cell only. I was buzzing at first, and only later came to realization that I'll be serving out my time on the wing that contained the most racist and violent criminals who really couldn't be trusted to share a cell. Having my own cell made a huge difference to my life inside, and that is the wing where I spent over a year of my last sentence. Similar to the last video I made, this video took a lot longer than I thought. On this video, I'd also planned to talk about the most memorable things I witnessed and the most memorable characters I came across in prison. Most of all, I wanted to talk about whether it was actually a good idea to knock out the first person to mess with you on your first day or week in order to prove that you are not an easy target, with a story about a particular inmate who did just that. If you do want to hear more, and honestly I could talk for days, hit that like button and I'll release part 3 in a month or a couple of years. Peace.